Let me introduce myself again. My name is George DeBakey, and I'm president of DeBakey International. I've been involved in assisting U.S. organizations in expanding overseas, particularly in the Middle East. And I started this edWeb community, global community, last November. And I will introduce our speaker here in a few minutes after I make a few other comments. You can see here how to connect. If you haven't joined our Ed Global community, please do so. There is no charge to join. You just got to sign up on edweb.net and then go to Ed Global. There are many other communities you may be interested in signing up with. You'll also get a CE certificate sent to you after this is within the next 24 hours, and access to the slides and other resources on our site. Here's some webinar tips so that you can enjoy the webinar better. Be sure to close down applications such as Skype that may use up some of your bandwidth. It shows you if you need to maximize your screen, what you need to do. I mentioned the certificate will be sent out in the next 24 hours. And then it shows you there the hashtag for edWeb for tweeting. I mentioned earlier, some of you may have joined late. This is where we've had some of our webinars in the past year. We just got started last November. We've had Canada, Europe, Australia, and Middle East, and we will continue to expand and cover other regions around the world. So if you have any suggestions, please send them to us. So let me move on to our presenter today, Michael Bartlett. Michael is a transplanted Texan, graduate of Texas A&M, and has a PhD. He's been out in the Middle East almost 2 years. He's curriculum director at the Victoria International School of Sharjah. I'll let him tell you where Sharjah is. I met Michael about 8 months ago at an international baccalaureate conference in Dubai. He's got a very interesting school that he's associated with. We'll discuss the school he's with and also some of the issues and challenges that a school faces being overseas, and particularly in the Middle East. And Michael, I will now turn it over to you, and I will temporarily close down my picture here so the bandwidth won't be affected. And also, I'd remind people you can ask your questions in the chat down there, like many of you are doing now, putting information in there. And Michael will probably answer those later, and I'll keep track of them, or you can also ask questions after he finishes his presentation. You cannot talk to us, but you can put your comments in there, and we'll look forward. We always usually have a lot of interaction, so we'll look forward to your comments. So Michael, the program is all yours.
Good evening from Sharjah. I'm very excited to be invited, even more excited to represent my other avenues that we have. Big thank you to George. I do comments that I'll say just for housekeeping. Because I'm a standard physics teacher by trade, I don't do well with questions in the middle of my lecture. No offense to anyone. So if you'll just type your questions, I've asked George to follow them up toward the end, and he'll make sure either I scroll through them and get to them, or I have the opportunity to answer them at the end. Also, because I'm a physics teacher, you can probably tell I'm a bottom line, very concrete sequential learner, which means I'm going to go A, B, C, D, E, and then I'm going to be done. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. So again, get your questions. I'm very excited to be here. I ask myself almost every day when I get home from work, how did I get here? How I got here, you know, reflects a lot of who I am. I think we ask ourselves a lot, why do we change schools? Why do we when we have things that seem to be doing well. I think it's because we always look for that challenge. One of the things I'll say in the beginning is my main, which has changed considerably over the last 17 years of teaching and athletic coaching, is I'm a father and a husband first. I am definitely not a teacher first, nor am I administrator, because the curriculum position I hold is an administrative position at our school, which has changed considerably, and I would even say has made me a better teacher and, quite honestly, a better administrator. And I now have teenagers, which has significantly changed my view on teaching secondary school students. You would think see the book, read the book, answer the questions from the book would make sense to a teenager. I now have a 16-year-old daughter, and where's the book? How do you spell the book? And I can't find the book because you walk in her room and all of her clothes and all of the other paraphernalia that goes with 16-year-old girls tend to cover that kind of stuff up. Again, like I said, I am a physics teacher by trade. My original degree from Texas A&M, as George points out, is in golf course construction and mechanical engineering. Now, how you get from there to teaching high school physics in the UAE is a very long story that we don't have time for on this webinar. I kid my wife all the time I'm going to write an autobiography, and I'm only going to publish it for her just so she makes sure that she tells the stories right way long after I'm gone. I'll say that I am a nerd. I'm proud to wear that. If you ever watch The Big Bang Theory, I think I could be, I wouldn't be Howard, but I think I could be almost every person and every character on that. Now, with that comes some viability in my current curriculum position, because I have to, and I get the, hold on, I don't have to. I get the opportunity to spend time with humanities teachers and art teachers and English teachers, as well as heads of faculty, and that can be a lot of fun at times. The other thing that I'll say is I stumbled upon teaching as an accident. I was in the golf business, doing really well in the golf business, had built a couple of golf courses by luck on a couple of different, in a couple of different countries, both the U.S., built one in Puerto Rico and then down in Mexico. Long story short, my mother's side of the family comes from a long line of teachers and athletic coaches in Texas. And my Uncle Kenny always said, you know, you never know. Finish your teaching stuff. You never know. Just do it. You're going to be close enough. And so in the summers, just to make him happy, I would get some of my education hours when and where I had time. And lo and behold, life happens sometimes. And now I am living what I would call the ultimate teaching experience. For those of you who have never experienced the Australian model of teaching and the one we're in at Victoria International School of Sharjah, with Victoria being Victoria, Australia, or with the capital city of Melbourne, we as teachers are the full deciders of the education of our students within our classroom, and we're giving a base set of outcomes. We don't take standardized testing, although we have it for baseline decisions that enhance and evolve our curriculum. We have a very open model. I invite you anytime you come, look me up. I'll tour you the school. I'm very used to brick and mortar schools that have, you know, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 windows and a big wooden door with a little small window at the top. My physics classroom is all windows on one side with a window door, and all windows on the other side that overlook Mamsar Lagoons or the Arabian Sea. Again, it is what I would call the ultimate teaching experience. I tell a lot of my colleagues, when I was finishing my second master's and my PhD, I really, about 13,000 words into a 27,000 word dissertation, I thought, man, I am wasting my time. I am never going to use this. And then all of a sudden I get here and I get the opportunity to actually use it every day, where you can make specific strategic decisions for a student, and you don't have to have permission, and you don't have to highlight it in a folder, and it doesn't have to be part of an individual education learning plan and all of those things. Before I really get into the meat of all that, where in the heck is Sharjah? I've popped a map on here. This is the United Arab Emirates. If you'll look down to the southwest, you'll see the border of Saudi Arabia. Some of you know where Qatar is with their Doha capital. To our southeast or bottom right, you'll see Oman. If you're not a geography person, which I'm not, due north is primarily Iran. Now, some of you may have heard of Abu Dhabi, some of you may have heard of Dubai. Sharjah is what I would call, as we say in America, a bedroom community of Dubai. You'll see Dubai in the bottom left-hand portion. You see Sharjah City. I'm about halfway in between. There's 3 little small lagoons just south of the arrow of Sharjah City. My school overlooks both of those lagoons. My apartment overlooks the other one. So very, very, very interesting place. I'm sure a lot of you know of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, which is the tallest building in the world, I think, for a little while longer. What I will say about Dubai is Dubai has sidewalks and roads that are paved and curbs, and Sharjah has sand. We do have a few major roads, but as we say, Sharjah is the land of sand, and Dubai is the land of brick. So if you ever get to Dubai, I invite you to come over to Sharjah, see our school. Now, what is our school? We're the Victoria International School of Sharjah. I've left you a website that has a link there of who VISS is and what we are. About 8 years ago now, the ruler of Sharjah, now I'm not going to get into a whole lot of government things, but the ruler is the sheikh or the leader of Sharjah, which is an emirate within the United Arab Emirates. It's similar to states of the United States, except they're royalty, and they don't necessarily have to adhere to things within Sharjah as a whole. I'm sorry, the UAE as a whole. So our ruler visited. He wanted to start a school, and he's a double PhD, both earned from the United States. He decided that the school system in Sharjah was not what he needed or wanted it to be. He went out and toured about 60 schools over the world over the course of 1 year. Went to a premier school in Melbourne, which is Victoria, Australia, the state of Victoria. Loved the open floor plan, loved the open atmosphere, loved the open-ended, outcome-driven and skill-driven opportunities of the curriculum. Came back and told his son, who at that time was the Minister of Education, I'm starting a school and this is what it's going to look like. Go to Australia and figure out how to do it. About 15 months later, we opened. Our first class was there was 3 classes, 3, 4, and 5, with about 40 students. And that was 7 years ago in September. This year we opened our doors to 1,382 students in grades KG1 through, nursery through grade 13. And I've also left you a little tweak there to Sultan bin Dr. Al-Qasimi. I did say grade 13 in that a lot of our graduates up until this past year were Victorian Curriculum of Education graduates, which means they would graduate with an Australian diploma. We ran into significant issues as we got larger, because we're a Northern Hemisphere school, they're a Southern Hemisphere timetable. And so our students would finish all of their coursework in June, and then they would have to stay around until the end of November to take exams for the VCE Certificate of Education, or as we know, the diploma. We made a decision that we would eliminate that quote-unquote grade 13 and allow our students to graduate at the end of year 12. Our last VCE class will take their exams starting next week. Sad to see them go, but excited about some of the other things that we have coming. We are a new IB school starting on our second cohort. I teach IB Physics 1, IB Physics 2, both standard and higher level. I did teach chemistry last year. I've given that up just because I don't have any more time. In addition to that, this year we have started a brand new diploma program, which is a U.S.-based diploma program called the Global Citizen Diploma. I myself, with our 6 faculty heads, have written that diploma and that curriculum. And the main reason is we have about 30% of our upcoming students, as we continue to grow, that want to go to school in North America, whether that be the United States or Canada. And a lot of the schools in the U.S., university and college-wise, do take the IB and have a somewhat understanding of it, but they are more understanding of the equivalent of a high school diploma. And so one of the reasons I actually got hired was to help them change into that high school diploma. The most unique thing I will say about our school is we have 95 nationalities among our students. Now, I'm not sure exactly nowadays how many schools or how many countries there are in the world, but I know 95 is a lot. In addition to that, we have 61 nationalities among our teachers and staff. Just in my new IB1 class, both higher and standard, I have 16 students with 14 different nationalities. I have American, I have Canadian, I have New Zealand, I have Australia, I have India, and I'll forget one, so I won't embarrass myself. It's very unique in that I come from the jobs that I had in the U.S. there in Texas. The majority of those communities, you had kids that have been there for 13, 14, 15 years. Their parents had gone to school there. They're all Texans. The majority of them are U.S. based. Interestingly enough, the majority of our kids here are 3 or 4 or 5 year students, and then they move on. Just because that is the uniqueness of what I would call the UAE, both in its economy and its makeup. I will say that the political regimes going on around the Middle East with Syria and Egypt and even the Arab Spring about 3 years ago have significantly changed the makeup of our school. Not in a negative way, just it has changed it. We have a unique number of what we in the U.S. would call refugees by definition, but they're not, because when they step in the classroom, they know what to learn, they know how to learn, and they got it going on, and they understand homework, and they know what it means to turn in an assignment, where some of that in some of our other populations tends to be a bit of a struggle. Enough of that. Now, why did I come here? And why would I say any of you would come here? The question I would ask was, why not? I was offered a position in the Middle East overseas about, my son's 9, so 9 years ago. And we were very comfortable, enjoyed my job, almost had my house paid for, really enjoyed my little niche that I had gotten to teach for 7 years, and I taught it the same way, and I knew exactly who my students were going to be, and I knew their parents. And about 2.5 years ago, my wife and I both, by a family matter, ended up needing to move to take care of older family members. We kind of nominated ourselves because we just thought, hey, you know what? We're teachers. We can get a job anywhere. At that time, I was just finishing my 14th year of teaching. We went to a Texas community where they had about 4 high schools, and I couldn't get a job because I was too qualified. I know that sounds odd and it sounds ironic that you can be too qualified, but what that meant to that administration of those schools was they would have to pay me too much, which meant I took up too much of a budget number, and then they would turn around and hire a 1 or 2 year teacher in that position. I'm not saying 1 or 2 year teachers are not important, because they will ultimately change the face of education as we know it from a positive standpoint, I believe. But it really put one of those obstacles in my family's life. Not 2 weeks later, as luck would have it, or depending upon what you believe, I got a call from a headhunter that said, "Have I got a deal for you?" And you get to some of those things where, this has got to be too good to be true. One thing led to another. Interviewed, got the job. My wife interviewed. She got the job at the same school. My wife also teaches. She teaches IB biology and grade 9, grade 10 general science. We loaded up. Actually, we didn't load up. We sold our house. We sold all of the belongings in our house. We sold our vehicles. I sold my boat, which was a really, really hard thing to do. We put we had a garage sale. We put the remaining parts of our stuff in 5 boxes and 4 suitcases and got on a plane, and here we are. That's how I got here. Now, I would tell you, investigate it, look into it. There are many positions and opportunities. My experience in dealing with a lot of schools, I serve on an accreditation team here in the Middle East now that goes around and does that. I'm an education consultant that I'll get to a little bit later for a couple other companies here in the Middle East. I have not found one bad school. I had the opportunity to serve on a few committees and accreditations in the state of Texas that I found many bad schools. Now, what constitutes a bad school? I think, as I would assume almost all of us are educators here, you know it when you see it. And so what I'll say to you is, you know it when you see it. At VISS, I am here and I will likely stay here because we have individualized inquiry-based teaching. Now, what does that mean? When I walk into my class every day, I have an outcome and I have a skill. I'm either teaching the outcome, teaching the skill, or practicing one or the other, or both. I have the opportunity to change that outcome based on some of the skills that are being exhibited that have the opportunity to change the education of that kid or that student. Now, I still have to achieve that outcome. From science, it's a whole lot easier because we're a lot more manipulative, skill-driven, and a lot more lab experience, skill-driven. But now being in charge of curriculum for our school, all the way up, all the way down, what I'm learning is it really opens up doors and opportunities for our English, both for reading, writing, speaking, and listening, to not be painted into a corner and really have individualized learning. It also provides unique opportunities to teach, as I'm learning more and more, true research skills. One of the things that I really, really struggled with teaching in Texas my last 4, 5, or 6 years is our current generation of students, what I would say ages 14, maybe 15 to 22, 23, research is Google. Where maybe my generation, and maybe those a few years older than me, our research was a library with microfiche and encyclopedias and such. We have adopted the Big Six research here, which allows for individualized teaching. I think if you're a teacher, that's a very drawing opportunity. To be honest, about my first 6 weeks in the classroom, I was scared to death of it, just because I'm a physics teacher. I see the plan, work the plan. It was really fun to now evolve into, you have this idea of a physics experiment, and then all of a sudden you leave it open enough that they will practice the skill, they will achieve an outcome, but then you can do a true extension and see a developmental opportunity for an extra skill or another skill. The other part is we do have a base curriculum, but we and I, as the head of curriculum, give our teachers the opportunity to assess multiple ways. Now, we do have end-of-term assessments. We do have final exams. We have instituted those because the Ministry of Education here in Sharjah has changed their tune of we want an A, B, C, D, E, F grade. We do A, B, C, D, E, F grades. We have common assessments and common moderations because we want to treat all the students equally and fairly when it's time to judge and give transcripts and go to universities and such. But in the process of giving that, I can't even begin to tell you how rewarding it is to walk in a classroom, because I get to go do some of the classroom observations and see a group here writing about a poem that they read in English, this group acting out the poem that they read in English, this group technically discussing it. Well, what's wrong with the poem? Well, it's not 4-parameter or whatever it's called. And they're all really engaged in that poem, which where I come from and in my idea, and it's a holistic view of education, I think that's what education is. All right, I'm 26 minutes in, George. I'm 2 minutes ahead of schedule. I'm going to show you a few pictures of Sharjah, not necessarily what it is, but who it is. That is our Al-Kasbah, which is has many different Arabic meanings. The best one I can come up with is carnival. That is also looking out the window of my daughter's KG2 class. You can see jet skis in the lagoon. This is the Al-Khan Lagoon. If you're looking at the Ferris wheel, you see a short building to its left and then 2 other buildings to its left. If I could continue the picture, 2 more buildings. That's my apartment building overlooking this lagoon. That is the 3rd largest Ferris wheel in the world, or so they brag. And then it's a carnival atmosphere. Of course, they have other rides, and they have coffee, and I think they have horseback riding there at times. They have lights. They have a Sharjah book festival down there in the winter. Just a multitude of things just right around the corner from where we go to school and where we live. What did I do? Oh, there it is. That's one of the few things that I would say, why not? I mean, how many of your children get to ride a camel? That's my son and my daughter about the 6th or 7th week that we arrived here. There are unique things that you want your kids to experience. I know, looking back on my childhood, I can recall all the times I got in trouble and all the cool things my parents let me do. Riding a camel, I think my children will always remember. Now, I threw this in, which is quite interesting. This is the swimming pool of the Sharjah Hilton. I think George is actually going to stay here in about 2 weeks. To your left, you can see the reflections over the balcony. That's the lagoon that I just showed you a picture of with the Ferris wheel. The only reason I put this slide in is this is where our VCE graduation dinner and all of our subsequent graduation classes have their dinner. And so they set us up around the swimming pools, and we have a lectern in between the swimming pools where the students give their speeches and such. It's a little different than a normal graduation ceremony. We do have formal graduation ceremony, but this is more the dinner. Parents come, cousins come, nieces, nephews. Fortunately, I get to go. But it is a unique atmosphere in that we have the opportunity to formalize graduation as we do in the U.S., and then we have the opportunity to celebrate graduation that I haven't been a part of until I got here. And it is a unique celebration of a journey. And again, until I got here, I didn't really... I can remember having conversations thinking, we should celebrate this more. It's too formal. They do it. It's a pretty awesome place. Next picture is When I go back to that why not statement, this is a Ghost Rolls-Royce custom painted. Now if you know cars or if you don't know cars, you know Rolls-Royce. The Ghost, there's only, I think there's 137 that were made in these particular year models. This one belongs to one of the crown princes of Dubai. It was pretty awesome to have my son stand in front of it, take a picture of it. And those are things that there are occasions you get to experience them. I would say almost every Friday you could do this. And it never is boring. It never is old. It is always different. There are times when the little guy in the picture will say, "Okay, Dad, is it cars today or camels? Because I'm confused. I don't know if it's a week or a B week." And then last I will say, then you get to the ludicrousness sometimes of just the ludicrousness. This is in a public mall that has tons and tons of stores, and you can say this is the house that Fried Chicken built, but if you look in the restaurant, there's not many people enjoying the fried chicken. George, will you make note of that question of the socioeconomic status of our students, because I do want to comment on that later. There are a few things that when George and I were talking about this and having the opportunity to really give what I would consider a unique perspective, some specific topics that I wanted to go through, and I have about 15-20 minutes to do that. When I got here, we really struggled, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, with university and college entrance. In the States, it's pretty simple. You find out where you have an idea you want to go, you fill out the application, you drop them a transcript, you send them a check, and you take an SAT test, and if you score high enough and you have enough money, you get in. Coming from here until some of the new adoptions from the Ministry of Education and even our school, it wasn't that easy. Very few non-American schools here in the UAE take the SAT. I learned that very few non-American schools did transcripts. You took your final report card to universities either here or those that would accept these quote-unquote diplomas, and you either they most of the time let you in because you either had enough money or your grades were good enough. And then almost 25% of the schools in the UAE, and I think I'm actually a little light on that comment, don't have an accredited diploma for their graduating students, which is unbelievably ironic to me. And so we had an accredited diploma, the VCE diploma, that could get you into university in Australia, guaranteed, and some universities in Canada. We had a hard time with our students getting into the U.S., getting into Europe. We had a few that wanted to go to Asia. And interestingly enough, limited to no entrance here in the UAE. Now that we've embarked on the IB and then also our new American-based Global Citizen Diploma, and we've formalized what we would call a transcript process, and stamping the transcripts and sealing the transcripts, we've gone from maybe 15%, I wish I knew the exact number, but 15% of our students gaining entrance to admission to universities in Australia to this graduating class. All of them have gained admission to the university and college of their choice. So from 15% to 100%. Now we do have 2 of our kids going to Australia, so we could throw them out statistically, but that's been a really passion of mine because I want to give every opportunity for education, and I would even go post-secondary education. We didn't offer that opportunity at VISS, and unfortunately I visited some schools that don't have the opportunity to offer that. Now, I've done some consulting with them and explained to them the process and helping them through that, so hopefully those kind of things will change. There are positives to the job, because I know George has talked a little bit of some of the issues, and even maybe titled it One of our biggest positives is our parental involvement. When I would go to my son or daughter's parent night, which when they were in elementary, we would have 30, 40 parents. It's always the same 30, 40 parents. The first parent information night I came here, at that time I think we had 280 students maybe in grade 9, 10, the one that I went to first. And I think we had 190 parents. That's incredible to have that. When we have morning teas or coffees, or we have parent-teacher nights where we have formal, you come, you meet, you talk about your report. I have almost 100% attendance every time. And they're not, as a parent, what I would call the pain in the rear end parent. And you have those, and you appreciate them, but they want to help. And they're not PTA parents either. And I know that might be a negative misnomer, and I don't mean it by saying it. But they truly care about growing the school and changing the school. One of the things I'll mention here is, remember, our school's only 7 years old. I wrote a policy today that's a homework, or this week, the homework policy that we didn't have, that we needed, that we just kind of evolved into. We still have growing things, and the parents really, really do want to be involved in those things. I've talked about the interactive environment that we have. It's a very open learning plan, and I actually meant to grab some pictures of the school and show them to you, and honestly completely forgot. We have an iPad pilot and trial that I'll talk about in a little while. Very technology driven. We discourage Google for research. We discourage Wikipedia for research, even though I'll say they're getting better. But the main reason I have interactive environment is, one of the things about this base curriculum is it is truly student-led and interaction-led teaching, where the teacher is the facilitator. One of the things that one of my master's teachers used to tell us, if you come home and you're dead tired, you didn't do a good job teaching. If you come home and you're refreshed and your students are dead dog tired, you did a good job teaching. It's very student-led. That doesn't mean they stand up and teach the class, but they get the opportunity to decide their direction. Sometimes it's difficult to facilitate. Sometimes it's hard to keep them within, or I don't want to say within the box, but not so far outside the box that they go insane, which does happen on occasion. Actually, it did happen in my physics class today with the Walk This Way lab. But, very interactive, very opportunistic. One of the things that we really struggle with, and I think all international schools as a whole in the Middle East struggle with, is teacher recruitment. Our Ministry of Education in Sharjah limits us to 1, 2, or 3-year contracts. It's really hard for my job then to get continuity, say, in the Department of English, where last year I turned over 3 of 5 English teachers in the secondary school. This year I'll only turn over 2 of 5, but I will be adding a number because our student population is growing, so I will still have 3 of 6. So 50% of my English department will be new. We're getting better because our documentation is getting better. Having the opportunity to provide student work from past teachers to current teachers is getting better. We're lobbying the Ministry of Education to allow 4-year contracts. And the other thing, when I first got here, you could sign a 2-year, but you could only do a 1-year extension on a 2-year. Just some weird things that were very odd. The majority of our teacher recruitment comes from the companies like Teach Anywhere. We actually do what's called the Teaching Roadshow, where we go to the schools the teaching recruitment fairs in London, Singapore. We do the 2 in Australia. We haven't had a need to go to the U.S. yet because we get very quality applicants from Randstad's Teach Anywhere that need to fill the particular roles we have in our American diploma. Is at times difficult, but we are learning that you can keep the teacher and the family happy. It's easier to get them to stay on for an extra year. My wife and I originally signed 2-year contracts, and we have already extended for another 2-year contract. I would say if you're interested, go to our website. If you're interested in the Middle East, I do believe Teach Anywhere is one of the better ones. I know George can actually probably give you some ideas on that too, because I know he has a lot of dealings with other recruiting fairs. They're the Abu Dhabi Education Council, who I do some consulting with. They do recruiting fairs in all over the U.S. If you're interested, log in. Because it is a unique opportunity and it's different than what I would consider an overseas teaching thing. Let me take a second to talk about the issues. My biggest concern as the head of... Sorry, I need to take a drink. Excuse me. My coffee's getting cold. My biggest concern when I came here was quality professional development. It doesn't matter the professional development I'm talking about. Whether it's, increasing ESL across, all curriculums, or expanding STEM within science or math, we could get no quality professional development. It was not necessarily that we couldn't pay for it. It was hard to get it from the U.S. just by simple means of we're starting our PD stuff in most of it in August, a few in January, and a little bit throughout the year. It's hard to fly someone over and only get a 1 or 2 day PD. You really would need to cooperate with other schools to get them to have a day, you to have a day, some others to have a day. Where in the U.S., when I did a lot of that, having worked in San Antonio and Dallas, I could have a guy come from today because he was based in Dallas or in San Antonio for a day, or even fly him from Houston. It's a 45-minute flight. He could come in, do the PD. He could be home the next day. You can't do that here. And then the last thing, because I am going to wrap up here in the next couple minutes because we do want to have some Q&A. We struggled with quality resources. Now we're expanding on some of that I'm going to talk about in my pilots. And we really couldn't get quality technology. Now, being a science guy, when I say technology, I'm calculator driven, I'm vernier driven with probes and such. And one of the things that we've instituted in Sharjah, and we're really working hard at expanding that with some of my other relationships, is piloting things and having other schools sign into our pilots. A couple of pilots that we are doing and have done, we are a TI, Texas Instruments device pilot school, where we are working with TI Inspire, which is one of the new international baccalaureate calculators and devices. Process of trying to do some work with Veneer to get that done with us, because they work so closely with TI, but we're struggling again with that quality PD. Can they help us once we get the technology? Can we get the resources that go along with it? You can get the resources, but it's not just call up Amazon and off they come with 150 copies. Or you can call up one of your publishing companies in McGraw-Hill and, okay, yeah, no problem, we can get you 400 copies of this textbook. Unfortunately, it's just not that simple. We've really worked hard and worked closely with TI. We've even helped them expand a little bit. I'm working a little bit with them as an education consultant and a professional development consultant in the UAE, with us doing some of the pilots at our school to help get other schools with that. We're also piloting, which just has started, is a reading software, Mayan. Let me say something. I'm not plugging these guys. I want to say that up front. I'm using them because they offer me and my school the best opportunity for that quality technology, that quality resource. Mayan is a reading software, or a reading program where, in Texas, my son, he'd read a book, he'd go to the computer, he'd take a test on the book, and then that assessment would decide another book opportunity or set of books for him to read. None of that existed here. And so we've adopted a pilot with Mayan. We're actually going to host George, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're hosting a workshop for them to be able to get to more schools in the UAE on helping our kids read. And not, here's a book, read the book, which is good, but helping them be assessed on what they're reading. Just straight reading comprehension. And then the last thing I'll say, which is really, really important, and if you're teachers, you'll understand this. Teachers are about creating links with the past and creating links with the future. There are many times, especially in the U.S., and I don't want to knock U.S. education because there are many, many, many good things to it, but there were many times when I felt like I was handcuffed to teaching to a test, and I didn't get to teach to a connection or an outcome. The majority of the schools here, I've had the opportunity to see them be able to teach to an outcome. Really, really cool opportunities for teachers to do that. I think 7:45 was my time to stop talking and we could do some Q&A. Is that right, George? Yeah, I'll take your word for it. One of the questions on there for sure was the socioeconomics of my school. It costs for my school anywhere from 30,000 AED, which is 30,000 dirham, which is about give or take 15,000 American dollars per year, to 30 is 7,500 American dollars per year. 15,000 American dollars per year. Uniqueness of that is here. The majority of the companies that sponsor our have built-in education fees, and so a lot of our parents' companies live in the UAE and work in the UAE.
Okay, Michael.
I have everything from royalty.
Yeah, I was going to try to start the Q&A. Do you want to? Are you ready to do that?
Yeah, I had started it, but you asked me a question, and I'll answer.
I apologize. Which question were you working on there? I was going to go back.
I was working on the socioeconomics.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead and finish that, and then I'll ask you some others that I've been keeping track of.
All right, I have the third in line to the Sharjah throne. His grandfather is the owner of our school and the ruler. I have the third in line to the Ajman throne. His grandfather is the ruler of Ajman. And I have the second in line to the Umayyad Emirate throne. Father is the ruler. In addition to that, I have a young man that had spent the last 5 weeks in a Syrian refugee. As far as the socioeconomic impact, I mean, it's big. Fortunately, they all come with a will to learn. Very, very much fun for me.
Okay,
all right,
great.
George,
This has been very good. Let me, with the 10 minutes we've got left here, and we can always try to follow up later and answer some of these, but let me try to see if I can go back with a couple questions. Well, we did have some follow-up on your on IB and the global citizen diplomat. The question was, is the global citizen diplomat or diplomacy embraced and used in IB schools worldwide?
No. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we've noticed is, let me say I don't know about worldwide. I can only speak to the UAE. IB schools here are predominantly only IB, and they don't have a second outlet. One of the things that we really strived hard here was needed to create a second stream or a second students that didn't need the IB. It doesn't mean they're not capable of doing the IB. They didn't necessarily need the IB for where they wanted to go to university. There are some that do need the IB, and that's what we're providing for them. Right now we have 81 students in IB diploma, 39 students in our global. A really hard look at where you go to university, what do you, all of the things that are necessary. Then ultimately it's just a global citizen diploma. Looked at a lot of other avenues, and we can only students for us didn't need the IB as a whole. We're going to made sense to pattern ours after the North American, what I would call a credit-based. The other questions I'm going to add to it now was about the global citizen and the outcomes and such. It is based on our Victorian curriculum, outcome and independent driven, but we do take assessment or a final examination is not American, but SAT based. That's a better. That is what we would call our precursor to the SAT. Will require all of our global citizens. Still outcome driven. It still is a little more focused, and when they pass the class, they get a credit.
Can I ask you about what about your accomplishments of your students after graduation? Do most of them leave the country and go overseas to university, Western schools? Do they come back to the community for those that are local? Any kind of, where do they go after they graduate?
So far, George, we have very little of them come back. The majority of them do leave the. Have not had a Royal graduate or a Ruler graduate yet, so we're not. We'll have a few students. Our outgoing global citizen and IB class that will go to the school. IU Abu Dhabi, which is a big deal. Other than that, they're going to Asia, they're going to Europe, they're going to the US. Pre-offers possibly from Stanford. We have one pre-offer. Don't have a lot returned, but that's just the nature.
I would guess though you also have a lot of your students though are, I guess, are they expatriates type students that are going to school there, but they would not necessarily stay there, correct?
Yeah, George, we have 95 nationalities.
What about somebody had asked a question? I'm assuming out of that you must have a lot of languages spoken.
Yes, we do. Our only delivery of English for all of our classes, with the exception of Arabic as a first language, Islamic as a first language, French as a first language. Everything else is delivered in English and require our students to speak in English. All of our reporting is in English. We still have a lot of different languages spoken.
Okay. Another question we had also is, do you ever take advantage of virtual professional development? Since there's so much available out there these days, whether it be on the internet or for companies, what are some of the things that have you considered? I think possibly with some of the companies you mentioned, there's probably professional development with some of that. Can you comment?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. If you'll remember, one of the reasons we really wanted PI to come in and Mayan to come in, although we're lobbying the Ministry of Education very hard, they will not accept virtual continuing education. You have to have, I think, 15 hours over a 2-year up our contract by the ministry. Require it all. That's been a real struggle. I'd like to sit my people down and have a Skype PD with someone from here or even George. Unfortunately, although we're still working on it, we haven't gotten the Ministry of Education.
Another question we got, and obviously we're connected here via the internet, though, is what is the internet connectivity there? How good is it with the school? And do students own and use their own personal mobile devices in school?
I would say internet is better here than the U.S. Now, in the school, we have a direct link with the provider, which means we have our own bandwidth. Helps that our ruler owns part of that communications company. That doesn't help. That doesn't hurt. Building I live in, equally or better fast than any modem. Now, as far as devices, we haven't. One of the things I didn't mention about the pilot, we have a brand new iPad pilot sponsored by Apple, in grade 5, 6, and 7s, where all of our students have a bring your own device or iPad. We control the iPad. We have web filtering software that controls the iPad. Then our IB students and now our are allowed to bring their own device. They have to register it with the school. Lock all 3G, 4G out of our school building. Doesn't make our teachers very happy at times, but we do offer them on a different server the opportunity to register with the school, and they can get all the Wi-Fi that they want. But I would say, as a general rule, my Wi-Fi here is better than my Wi-Fi at my home.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think some people will be surprised that I know the federal universities in the UAE announced about 1.5 years ago a big iPad initiative where they're providing iPads to university students there. I've been involved working with some of them on that. Well, I think we're going to have to cut this off here. I'm going to make a kind of end the session here in a minute or two. Michael, I want to for sure thank you. This has been very interesting. Even though I've been to your school, it's a great school, and if any of you ever get out in the Dubai Sharjah area, I suggest you visit the school and the facilities there. I'll be there again in about 10 days myself in that area, and interacting with Michael's school and others, and I find the whole international school marketplace, particularly in the Middle East, is expanding very rapidly these days. I do want to be sure that, again, I mentioned about joining the global community. There's the link. Obviously, many of you found a way to sign up on the for the webinar this morning, and you'll see we put down there the link to that. You'll get a certificate within the next 24 hours. You can always go back in and view the presentation. There will be more upcoming webinars. We hope to have one next month on global collaboration with an individual that's very involved worldwide, connecting schools. I also want to be sure that I thank our sponsors, SIA, Software Information Industries Association, Also thank the edWeb team that does a lot of the work behind the scenes of getting all this active or involved for us and set up. And I know that Anders, you want to get some information on that Global Citizen Diploma, and I will be at the International Baccalaureate Conference in The Hague this week for the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and I think the Global Citizen Diploma is on the program. So if you have any questions on that, you can obviously, Michael can contact you, and I'll be sure he's got your email, and I'll be involved there myself. Thanks to everyone else who's made some comments about the presentation and interacted. Appreciate that. We did have one last one there about iPad policy. Michael, if you can answer quickly, do you have an iPad? Does the school have an iPad policy? Is there a school policy to control iPads?
Yeah, we have an ICT policy, Integrated Communication Technology Policy. Laptops, iPads, cell phones.
Are they allowed to bring them to school?
Only within 5, 6, 7 right now. Oh, and the IB1 and Global,
okay.
IB and Global Citizen. You have a policy that they have.
All right.
To
well,
sign.
thank you. My clock says 1 minute past 12, and we usually try to close these down within an hour. I appreciate everybody joining us. Pass the word. Let us know other things we can do. Michael, thank you. I'll be seeing you soon. And everyone have a good day or evening wherever you may be. Thank you very much. And this will all be posted within the next 24 hours.
Hey.
Bye-bye.